Official leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, sat down last week with our global anchor, Donna Friesen. From how, given the chance, he'd push through an Alberta-British Columbia pipeline to the aftermath of party deserters, here's that interview.
Mr. Poilievre, good to see you. Thanks for taking time with us today.
Likewise, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks. You too. 2025, let's talk about it. It hasn't been the easiest year for you. The Conservatives did receive 41% of the popular vote in the last election. You have a lot of loyal support right across this country, which I'm sure you're very proud of. Mm-hmm. But you didn't win the election, and you didn't win your own seat. That would be a big blow to a lot of people in your position. Have you reflected on what went wrong?
Well, I have reflected, and you're right, it is a big blow to a lot of people who voted for, in record numbers actually, voted for affordable food, affordable homes, safer streets after 10 years of inflation and rising crime. And so we always reflect on how we can continue to inspire those 8.3 million people, a record number, who voted for us, but how we can inspire even more. And so my message for the year to come will be one of hope. I think people desperately need hope. Hope that they can afford groceries, hope they can afford homes. And many have put hope in me in the past, but we have to keep inspiring them so that more will do so in the future.
What I meant with respect was a big blow to you personally. Have you reflected on what went wrong in the campaign, in your own leadership?
Well, yes, I have reflected, and obviously, I think my goal and one of the adjustments that we need to make is that people know that I'm a fighter, but they need to know what I'm fighting for and who I'm fighting for.
In the lead up to the last election, you were way ahead in the polls, if we believe the polls. You were on your way to becoming Prime Minister when Justin Trudeau was still around. When he left and a new Liberal leader came on the scene, your lead in the polls began to diminish to the point where, as we said, you lost the election. So something happened in that time, and you can argue that more Canadians put their faith in Mark Carney as a leader than in you.
Well, what happened was that we got a record number of votes, and the highest share of vote we've got since 1988.
I know you keep saying that, but I understand that.
It happens to be true.
Yes, but I'm trying to move, if you don't mind, I'm trying to move a little bit beyond that to say, how do you broaden the tent now? You were fighting for, I think, a lot of the same things you were fighting for before, and as I said, you have a lot of very loyal support. Mm-hmm. But if you want to take it to the next level, if you're still leader when the next election is held, how do you change that equation?
Well, my plan is affordability, affordability, affordability. That is the single biggest issue facing Canadians after 10 years of Liberal inflation. So how do we take it to the next level? We go to more people and tell them that we're going to cut back on the inflationary deficit so that dollars go further. We make clear that we're going to cut taxes on work, investment, energy, and home building so that people bring home more and they pay less. We're also going to talk a lot, I've said affordability, but there's also the issue of crime. I mean, 10 years of catch and release has left Canadians endangered. We're going to repeal catch and release, lock up the criminals, and make it so people feel safe again in their communities. There's immigration. We'll be talking about the fact that immigration is still out of control, and the government is allowing criminals and false refugee claimants to come in and undermine our security and drain our taxpayers. So those are all issues that we need to talk about in order to broaden our tent and win the support of Canadians for an affordable, safe Canada under a Conservative government.
Is it possible that in the last election, many Canadians just thought you weren't the man for the moment, and that it's your leadership that's the issue?
Well, my leadership got us a record number of votes. I know you don't like me
No, you said it. I think that's the fourth time.
It is a fact, though, right? And I think we led on all the issues. We led on fighting inflation, opposing carbon taxes, unblocking our resources,
and you've
treating
accused
addiction.
The Liberals of stealing your ideas.
Not quite. I want them to steal my ideas. I would say that they have stolen
the carbon tax. That was the first thing that Mark Carney axed,
and then,
as you wanted.
Right. He's stealing my words, but not the deeds. So a couple of things. One, I'm glad that Danielle Smith forced Mr. Carney to flip-flop on the threatened Liberal production cuts to the oil and gas sector and their costly regulations on the electricity sector. Mr. Carney has not committed to building a pipeline. He opposed the pipeline in question. He testified against the pipeline in question in a parliamentary committee in 2021, and of course the Liberal government.
He wasn't in when? He wasn't
in 2021. I can give you the
Prime
video.
Minister then. He's the Prime Minister now.
Right. But he was testifying.
So are you suggesting that? I know you suggest that he's doing this. It's disingenuous. This deal he has signed, the memorandum of understanding with Alberta. You don't think it's real?
That's correct, and I'll give you the background. He opposed the pipeline. He testified before a parliamentary committee against that same pipeline. The Liberal government killed that same pipeline in 2016, and numerous Liberal members of the present caucus have already made public social media posts saying it will never happen. So he understands that pipelines are very popular, so he wants to pretend he supports one until after the next election while telling people that he won't ever build one.
And
I think we need
Danielle Smith, the Conservative Premier of Alberta, seems very happy with the potential of another pipeline under Mark Carney.
Well, I want to see the reality, and she said that under my leadership we'd be well on the way to getting the pipeline done.
Right, but
she
you
just
didn't
said
win
that
the
the
election.
other day. Well, that's why I need to win the next one, and then we can actually get some projects done, because this pipeline will be fantastic when it happens under a Conservative government. $30 billion a year in overseas exports, less dependence on the Americans, about $1,800 in benefits per family per year, and a stronger Canadian dollar, which will make our lives more affordable to buy homes and food.
And
those are the things that we'll do.
Why do you think that you would get a pipeline built faster? What would you do to make that happen?
Get out of the way, because that's all that needs to happen right now. These
Get out of the
pipelines-
way of what?
The pipeline construction. So the federal government is the only level of government that needs to approve the pipeline. Under our Constitution, Section 92, the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction to approve or reject an interprovincial pipeline. The reason it doesn't happen, even though it's wildly profitable and popular, is that there is no federal permit to build it, and the previously approved pipeline was then canceled by this Liberal government in 2016. So if we get the government out of the way, approve a right-of-way, the private sector can then go ahead and build a pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to the coast. And so all we really need to do is get the Prime Minister out of the way, because he is the only one who has the authority to approve or reject
What
one.
about the duty to consult with Indigenous leaders?
We should do that.
You would do that?
Of course.
And what if after those consultations the answer is still no?
Well, the answer is given by the Prime Minister. And I'm running...
I'm saying if the Indigenous leaders say no.
That I will thank them for their input, and at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to decide. And my decision, and I'm telling Canadians before the election so they can vote on it, is I will approve a pipeline. Nobody has a veto. Not under our Constitution. There's a duty to consult.
There's a duty to
but
consult,
no
but if
duty.
the answer is after the consultations we don't want this, it won't matter to you.
It's actually, first of all, I wouldn't say it wouldn't matter. I would go ahead with the pipeline, and I would also clarify that when the Liberals killed this pipeline last time, in 2016, 75% of Indigenous communities along the path supported it. They overrode and overpowered those First Nations communities. And I think it's a really unfortunate stereotype to say that First Nations are against pipelines when the evidence is the overwhelming majority of them support it, although I think the media sometimes tries to stereotype that they're all against it.
I
That's
think
not
at the
true.
latest Assembly of First Nations meeting, there's a unanimous vote in supporting the Pacific Northwest Coast Indigenous leaders who don't want a pipeline.
Well, the last pipeline from northern Alberta to the Pacific had 75% of the First Nations communities along the route supporting it and benefiting from it. And we have these First Nations leaders in my own caucus who, for example, like Billy Morin, who is a former chief of the Enoch First Nations, and his community has been enriched because oil and gas has been allowed to expand. First Nations support oil and gas. Liberals and liberal elites often try to stereotype and stigmatize First Nations as being opposed to pipelines, but we need to get them built.
I think we should let Indigenous leaders who oppose it speak for themselves, first of all, but and there are those who do oppose it. Let me ask you about what's happened in your caucus recently in the last month. You've lost a couple of MPs. Two of them have crossed the floor. One is resigning. Does that send any signals to you about your leadership?
It sends a signal to me that the Prime Minister is trying to manipulate his way to the majority that Canadians voters denied him during the election.
I'm talking about Conservative MPs who left your caucus. I'm not asking about Mark Carney right now, but
I'll address them if you want me to.
Let me just read to you what one of them, Chris d'Entremont, said. He concluded after leaving the caucus, this is from his statement, that there is a better path forward than being under your leadership, and he wants to be part of leading solutions rather than opposing everything. And in an interview, he said being in caucus felt a lot of the time like being in a frat house rather than being in a serious political party. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of it is I look at the words that he said about only weeks earlier about the Liberal government. He said that Mark Carney's grocery price inflation was, quote, inhumane, and that Mark Carney had broken his promise to be judged by the prices at the grocery store.
So you're happy he's gone?
And then he went against the words that he spoke and the voters who elected him for an affordable agenda. And then you have Mr. Ma, who said also that Mark Carney had an irresponsible deficit that was driving up the cost of living and making life more expensive for his constituents. And now they've chosen to help Mr. Carney add those costs on the backs of Canadians. I think at the end of the day, they should respect that their constituents voted for our Conservative plan for a more affordable and safe country, and that's what they should respect.
Okay, let's move on to another topic I want to ask you about, which is something that world leaders now have to deal with. Many of them are dealing with every day, and that is President Trump. He is a unpredictable leader. I think that's fair to say. People are not exactly sure if they're on solid ground when they're dealing with President Trump. If you were Prime Minister, do you think you would be able to have reached a deal with him on tariffs? And how would you feel sitting across the table from him, trying to renegotiate NAFTA? Imagine yourself in that room.
Well, I would feel a great responsibility to defend Canadian workers and consumers. And I would live out that responsibility by getting a fair deal for the Canadian people, the aim of which is to remove the unjustified American tariffs so that we can sell our goods into the U.S. market, in exchange for which what we offer is a good, reliable Canadian partner for minerals, for energy, for international security.
What would you do differently that Prime Minister Carney has not been able to accomplish? I'm asking you what you would do differently. You know, the Ontario Premier calls President Trump a tyrant. Is that language you would use?
I would focus on the business relationship. We got to get a deal. At the end of the day, we're right next door to the biggest economic force in the history of the world. My focus is on getting a deal and the best possible arrangement for the Canadian people, defend our sovereignty, reopen markets.
That's Prime Minister Carney's objective too, to get a deal.
I'm sure it is,
so
but he
it's
hasn't
about
achieved
approach.
it.
It's about approach, I think, at this point. Let me ask you about a test of your leadership that's coming up at the end of January. How confident are you?
Very, because look, I'm the leader that will restore the promise of this country. I share the values and purpose of our party to make this a country where hard work is rewarded, food and homes are affordable, where streets are safe, and and I've been leading the debate on all of those issues.
Again, those are issues that we heard you campaign very strongly on in the last election. What I'm asking you now is, a year has passed. Almost a year. In January, it won't be quite a year since the last election. But do you feel you have to do something differently? Or it's the same messaging as the last campaign?
Well, like I said, I think people, they know that I'm a fighter, but they have to know what I'm fighting for, my why. Why is the most important question.
If you lose another MP to the Liberals, and I don't know if you know whether you will or not, because I'm not sure there's no clarity on that. It may or may not happen. You would then be facing a Liberal majority government, and you would be opposition leader for potentially another 3 years. How would that sit with you?
Well, I think it would sit very badly with the Canadian people who voted against a costly Liberal majority.
I'm asking you, would you hang on as leader?
I'm not giving up. I don't quit. And the people of our party, the welders, the waitresses, the plumbers and police officers, the soldiers and small business people, they're the ones who I'm fighting for, and I'm never going to stop fighting for them. They will decide with their democratic vote. We are not a party that makes decisions through backroom deals to form a costly majority government that nobody voted for. So I'm going to keep on fighting for the Canadian people and their chance to have an affordable, safe future as long as my party decides and the members and the grassroots people decide that I'm the one to champion them.
Thanks for taking time with us.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas once again.
Trade. Still to this very day, there is no trade deal.
Right.
You're a good friend of President Trump, we know. How surprised are you that Mark Carney has not been able to strike a deal for Canada?
I don't shill for politicians. I really shill for policy. And I've always said there should be a much stronger connection between the two economies, Canada and the United States, because they have the largest market on earth. We have the largest base of commodities that they need. And we both have to bulk up against the Chinese eventually. That's going to happen for sure. Specifics to what killed the trade deal is this. There was a deal at around 10% just a few weeks ago, maybe now it's 2 months ago, on 4 basic important commodities, including aluminum for car parts, at 10%. Then Ford decided to roll that video on the Super Bowl. Now, unless you understand how Trump works, you would have not done that because he's a very bombastic guy, and if you want to get policy done, you have to understand you don't do stuff like that. I'm not telling Ford what to do. I'm just saying the reason we don't have a deal is that video.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened.
It's adjustment.
And we are nowhere right now. And Carney knows. Look, I didn't vote for Carney, but I want him to win. And I think Canada is in a wonderful position now on a new thing that we've never had ever. Data centers, because we have the lowest cost of power in Canada.
Okay.
So we have to attract those billions of dollars to come up here.
Yeah.
Nobody trusts us yet because over the last decade under the idiot king, we destroyed our relationships with all the sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah.
None of them want to invest in Canada, so we're hoping that changes.
This right, like as he did, right, underneath and try and keep it, that feels pretty tight right there, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can, just breathe naturally. Let's just see what happens. Okay. All right, so we're at 1,367. We've already just passed 2. So now we're in the place where he can be having headaches. He can be, we're at 3,786. Look at this. We've just passed 5,000. Now we're in the toxic level. Right now we could be doing this 7,000 inside this mask of the CO2, 8,000 parts per million. And now this thing's gone off the Richter scale, folks. It can't even register how high the CO2 levels are inside. And look how many seconds that was.
So now I'm going to turn to something that probably of all the contributors only I can tell you, and that's that the design of these molecular structures in the vaccines, the injections, has no other purpose but to injure and kill. It's a huge claim. I've worked over 30 years with colleagues in what's called rational drug design. Every synthetic medicine, that is something not purified from nature, it consists of a series of atoms and molecules and formulations. Every single component in that vial, as it turns out, has to be chosen by a person. They're not there randomly, they're not there as a natural product. Someone decided to put them in there. And you put them in there because you have particular objectives, for the drug to be absorbed quickly or slowly, for it to last a long time or not, for it to go everywhere versus a certain area of the body, and so on. When I looked at these, I declare them toxic by design. They are intentionally harmful. Now, I think that fits perfectly with the lie you've been told about a pandemic. There isn't one. The purpose of the pandemic, I think, was to damage the economy, to get us used to doing what we're told, under a mock emergency and to roll up our sleeves to receive these dangerous materials. And I believe in short, if you do nothing and don't speak up and do what you're told, you will lose your freedom and then your life. I think some self-appointed group of very rich people have decided they don't like 8 billion people being on the planet and want it to be a much smaller number. I don't have a copy of the script, but I can deduce what they're doing. So, given the warning I've provided to you, I suggest that you get weaving and start talking to anyone and everyone, and do so relentlessly, because this is not going away. And if we do not protest, if we do not refuse and fight back, we will lose freedom first and then our lives.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. So, yeah, it's a bit of a depressing holiday here in Canadian Looney land. My mom died this week. That's rough. We had a tough time with my dad's death that just happened as well. It's not a great season, I guess, this year. Anyhow, we're trying to keep it light, show the Canadian politics as we have been doing. We've learned a lot. Let's tell a story. This one is about Sean Fraser, our Attorney General. In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
The Honourable Member for Brantford, Six Nations.
Brantford, South, Six Nations. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I thank the Justice Minister for his speech. The bill itself, Madam Speaker, is some 35 pages long. It makes 80 significant changes to the criminal code. In fact, the title of the bill itself is a Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. The question I put to the Minister is regarding sentencing. He spoke very generally about the consecutive sentence aspect to the bill. He spoke about the aggravated features of the bill for sentencing purposes. But he did not mention the one particular clause in this 35-page bill that actually increases the sentence for one particular offense. So I would like to know, of all the serious violent crime that is happening in this country, extortion alone up 330% in 10 years, why this particular Liberal Justice Minister and his government sought to change the penalty for contempt of court from 90 days to 2 years less 1 day. That is the only sentence in this bill that seeks a change.
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Before I address the member's question directly, I want to thank him for the conversations that we've had and for his advocacy to advance some of the specific reforms that are in fact included in this bill. This bill was not intended necessarily to revisit the penalties associated with every offence that exists in the criminal code. Of course, serious offences deserve serious penalties, but it was important for me to address the issue of contempt of court, because frankly, one of the themes that is carried throughout the text of this bill is really underlined by a culture of a lack of respect for the law. You can see the measures that we put in place to address that, with dealing with violent repeat offenders, addressing the number of crimes that are outstanding. But I wasn't satisfied that we had appropriate penalties in place for those who would openly defy orders of the court. It's important to me that we not only have penalties associated with criminal activity that takes place in communities, but that we have a regime that will protect the integrity of the court's processes if all other offences are going to be treated with respect to Canadians at large.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for the Honourable Deputy House Leader. Thank you very much.
Minister, for putting this bill forward and for his very pertinent speech in this House today. Madam Speaker, many police associations have called for a rapid passage of this bill. In fact, the London Police Association said, if I can read, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act represents a vital and long overdue advancement. This is an essential step in creating a safer London that our members serve in, equipping them with much needed legislative support, holding violent repeat offenders more accountable. Maybe the minister can share with this House why it's really important that we work together with all the parties across the House to make sure that this bill sees the day as soon as possible.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Look, thank you very much. To the extent we can adopt this bill quickly, we expect to see the positive implications it's going to have in communities more quickly. What's important to the member's question is that I prefer to do this in a way that is collaborative, not just with members in the House, but with different levels of the government and policing associations. The fact that this has attracted such extraordinary support from the people who actually enforce our laws and the people who manage the justice systems in provinces speaks to the fact that there is buy-in from people across the spectrum of political ideologies, across geographies and across partisanship. I hope that spirit that we've implemented in the development will also carry through when it comes time to cast our votes in this House.
Honorable Deputy Saint-Hyacinthe.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to say that we agree with C-14. We'll study it in more depth at committee. However, there are questions that we have. I'm just looking for the stats, but unlike what popular belief would have us believe, we have gone from 74% in 2019 to those who are incarcerated waiting for their trial to 72% in 2023. How is this possible, and how will this bill help to resolve this? The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Okay. Avant de commencer,
Before I begin, I'd like to thank my colleague from the bloc for their support for this bill. It's really important for cooperation and to bring about the necessary amendments. Just to clarify.
Details certain here. My colleague has raised a very real concern about the number of people in Canada who are facing pretrial detention. The right answer, in my view, insists that we will implement a framework that is designed to protect the public safety. This will engage conversations, particularly at provincial levels, about the resources that are necessary to deal with bail hearings expeditiously, to make sure there are enough police on the ground, enough prosecutors, enough judges to actually hear bail decisions, enough administrative support for the courts to do their jobs. If we extend the logic of the fear that I've heard, which is very real from people who've raised similar points, you would end up concluding that the right solution to process challenges would be to weaken Canada's criminal laws. I would disagree with that approach, but I would invite a healthy conversation during the committee proceedings about what resources should be in place and which levels of government have such responsibilities to ensure we don't just have strong laws on paper, but a system that has the capacity to implement them.
The Honourable Member for Carrick Prince George.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to our honourable colleague, the Minister, for his comments on this. My comments through you to the Minister is that I've worked collaboratively across all sides of the House for the last 3 years in the work on C-321, an act to amend the criminal code as it pertains to first responders and healthcare workers. I worked collaboratively across all sides to get it passed unanimously in the last Parliament at all stages, and it did. But the dissolution of Parliament made it fall off the order paper. We have a bill before us today, S-233, which the House in the Senate side passed it unanimously because it is so important. The Minister said this part of C-14 is critically important. I couldn't agree with him more. But would he support carving this section out and us as a House standing together, sending a message to first responders, paramedics, healthcare workers that we value them, and pass S-233 at all stages at some point during this conversation?
I think that's a good question. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And perhaps before I address the question directly, I want to thank the Honourable Member because I've had the opportunity to work with him a number of years ago when he put forward, I believe it was Bill C-211 in our first Parliament, which addressed the need to better support first responders and their mental health in particular. I know he's been a champion for first responders, as have I been from the very day that we were first elected. This is an important component of this bill, but quite frankly, I don't care who gets the credit. I want to see the protection afforded to our first responders. We can have a conversation perhaps after the debate concludes today on the best way to make that happen most quickly, to the extent we can support those who are working to keep our communities safe, liberal, conservative or otherwise. It's an idea that I support philosophically, but in practice as well.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Minister for Justice. for his efforts. But I note that the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and the director of the Criminal Justice Program has pointed out that 3 successive ministers of justice have noted that we don't have any standardized approach to collecting the data on how many people who apply for bail get it. The vast majority don't. Without this standardized data, we're making reforms without necessarily the evidence base that we need. And I wonder if the Honourable Minister for Justice has any comments on the question of whether we actually have a database and evidence base that's not driven as much by the very, very painful anecdotes, but by evidence.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As always, I appreciate questions from my friend and colleague from Saanich Gulf Islands. She's right that there is a paucity of data when it comes to the administration of bail in Canada. Part of the reason is we have different provincial systems which have different challenges. We have not only challenges as to when a person may be released on bail, how often they may receive bail, but also the reasons behind those decisions. This is an issue that will require collaboration amongst provinces to develop common standards to actually collect the data that we need going forward. But at the same time, in the absence of a perfect data set, we have the opportunity to work directly with the governments that administer the system and the law enforcement officials who actually work within the system day to day. When there is near unanimous perspectives of certain changes that are posing very real problems in communities, it's incumbent upon me to listen to those who have such responsibility to deliver on the words that are included in the criminal code. To the extent that we can launch an initiative to better collect data, to better share that data, both in a disaggregated way, but about offenders who may pose risks, I know that I would be more than willing to entertain a conversation as to what role the federal government may play in collaboration with provinces who have primary responsibility in this space.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House. Leader on a point of order.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. There have been some consultation, and I suspect, and I hope you would find unanimous consent for us to go back to questions on the order paper for about less than a minute.
Does the Honourable Member have unanimous consent?
Yes.
Agreed. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the government's responses to questions
to amend the National Defence Act and other acts. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. Members here are attending in person, and our Vice Chair is attending remotely through Zoom application. Before we continue, I wish to please ask you to consult the guidelines on your tables to prevent audio and feedback incidences, to protect the health and safety of our interpreters. I also like to remind the witnesses and members to please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. And for interpretation, please use your earpiece and select the appropriate channel for either floor, English, or French. Again, all comments should be addressed through the chair. I'd now like to welcome our witness, the Honourable Sean Fraser, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Sir, I invite you to make your opening remarks, and you have up to 5-7 minutes, however long it will require you to make it known how great you are and how great the Government of Canada is to try to help the witnesses and our most vulnerable victims in the CAF. Go ahead.
Well, look, I'll leave those statements for others to make. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir.
Mr. Chair. Thank you to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you to discuss Bill C-11. Before we begin, public safety is a priority for our government. It's a major priority for Canadians at the same time.
Criminal justice reform has been a major item on Parliament's agenda. You'll obviously have seen that as we move forward, part of that agenda involves criminal justice reform. We also want to ensure that as we move forward, we're making investments in the front line, whether that's the RCMP, our border officials, whether that's supporting frontline organizations that support victims. And we also want to make the upstream investments in affordable housing, mental health and addictions, programs for at-risk youth to help end crime and violent crime in the long term. But a major part of this strategy is going to adopt stronger criminal laws. Over the course of the past few months, you will have seen several major pieces of criminal justice legislation move forward through the parliamentary process. Of course, this includes the Combating Hate Act, which is going through the committee process, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, which has a sweeping set of reforms to strengthen the sentencing regime and make it harder for violent repeat offenders to be released on bail. And most recently, you would have seen Bill C-16, the Protecting Victims Act, which addresses a range of different offenses and penalties touching on intimate partner violence, the exploitation of children, sexual offenses, the penalties for sexual offenses, including higher maximums, the restoration of mandatory minimum penalties in a constitutionally compliant way, which have been struck down by the Supreme Court of Canada, and importantly addressing delays in the criminal justice system with a particular focus on those cases that involve sexual assaults, which we know have long suffered from challenges as a result of resource shortages at different levels of government, as a result of procedural timelines that have led to, unfortunately, too many cases being rejected, not because someone's been acquitted, but for delay. We want to address these problems by implementing meaningful reforms that will deal with the delays in the system, but at the same time, do a better job of ensuring that perpetrators are brought to justice at the end of the day. In a parallel way, at the same time we've made these amendments or proposed these amendments to Canada's criminal laws in a civilian context, there are certain overlaps that have amended rules in the military justice system. Some of those changes take place not in Bill C-11, but Bill C-14 and 16, which I've mentioned, as we try to break down silos within government to ensure we're trying to solve a problem more broadly, not just in one department or another. But other reforms respond directly to the reports commissioned by leading experts in their field, including Supreme Court Justices Fish and Arbour, to make changes to the military justice system. There are two main ones that I expect will be the focus of today's conversation, though I'm happy to take questions on other matters. The first is moving outside of the military justice system's jurisdiction, complaints involving sexual offenses. We have seen real challenges that were raised through the Arbour report in particular that demonstrate why it's not well positioned to have the complaint system and the tribunal exist within the chain of command. Though there are challenges in both the civilian and military system, it's been presented by Justice Arbour as a false choice with the fear of retribution, the potential interference that could happen within the chain of command that causes a culture of people not willing to come forward and to report sometimes egregious cases of sexual assault or serious sexual offenses that deserve to be investigated and prosecuted in a manner that the complainant will believe will be taken seriously. This is not to say all of the problems in one system are absent in the other, only that the path forward recommended by those who have dug into the issue and who have substantial expertise has recommended a particular path forward that was previously in Bill C-66, now making its way to this committee through Bill C-11. The second area of reforms that I expect members may wish to dig into will be about the changes structurally to have certain actors within the military justice system be appointed through the Governor and Council process, again, escaping the existing challenges that exist when you have someone in these positions within the chain of command. This would more closely mirror the process that's used in the civilian system, which does allow, notwithstanding the GIC appointment, a certain level of independence in the day-to-day operations. There are other matters that I'm happy to discuss, but suffice it to say, I hope that this is a matter in which we can all work together to find the best path forward to allow victims of sexual violence or sexual assault to actually have their complaint fully investigated, to have an environment where they feel comfortable moving forward with their complaint, and ultimately, where a crime has been committed, to have justice prevail. Mr. Chair, those are my comments. Merci pour l'opportunité d'engager aujourd'hui.
Minister, I should also mention to the members in the committee that we have Mr. Matthew Taylor, Senior General Counsel and Director General, Criminal Law and Policy Section, Department of Justice, Mr. Owen Ripley, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy Sector, Department of Justice, and I see there's also Genevieve Right. And Colonel Genevieve Lotier, is that pronounced correctly? Deputy Judge Lotier. My apologies. Colonel, I have a tendency of mispronouncing a lot of names in this committee. She's Deputy Judge Advocate General, Military Justice Modernization from the Canadian Armed Forces. Mr. Bazan, our Vice Chair, is online. You have up to 6 minutes, sir.
I believe, Chair, I'm taking the first round.
I'll pass my time over to Mr. Caputo.
Sorry, Mr. Caputo. Over to you.
Thank you. Glad you got my name right. Thank you to the witnesses for being here. Through you, Mr. Chair, I direct the following questions to the Minister. Minister, you were asked to appear and you refused, and yet you are here today. Why the change of heart?
So I'm very happy to be here. I'm glad to discuss this legislation with the legislative agenda that we've been moving forward with, including engagement with other parliamentary committees, making sure that we had the capacity to appear informed to discuss the matters. It's not a coincidence that I'm here days after we've tabled Bill C-16, the third piece of criminal justice legislation this fall. There's many priorities that we're trying to pursue simultaneously, and to make time for this committee is something that is a pleasure for me.
So to be clear, I mean, you've said it candidly, you blew off the committee until Bill C-16 was tabled.
No, I have a wildly different characterization. I would never blow off a committee, ensuring that we have the opportunity to appear where my testimony is most relevant, where we have the opportunity to manage the workflow through government, and ensuring, keeping in mind that this bill is technically the responsibility of one of my colleagues who's already testified at this committee, making sure we can advance multiple priorities at once is really part of the reason for my appearance today.
The issue is, Minister, you declined to be here, and then you accepted. And you just said that coincided with Bill C-16 coming forward. Now, I'm not sure, as a Minister of the Crown, you should be prepared to be here at any point in time. And I don't think that gives Canadians reassurance when the Minister can pick and choose when they're coming in. With that being said, Minister, I'm not sure about you, but I believe you would probably agree with this, that we should be listening to the people on the ground. They're the ones who are going to tell us whether something's working or not, whether something is good or not. We can probably agree on that, like victims, things like that.
I think it's important that we engage to understand the perspective from many people who have experience in the system, who've been tasked specifically with identifying solutions to conduct investigations,
of course,
including people who have lived experience. And bringing those perspectives together to identify the best path forward is part of the role of governing.
And the role of government is to listen. So if we are going to listen to groups like victims and like the Association of Canadian Police Chiefs, the reality is the testimony that's been heard at this committee has been very clear. It's been unequivocal, in fact, from what I've been told, is that victims and the Canadian Association of Police Chiefs have said that victims should have the choice. They should have the choice whether to participate in an overburdened system that has repeatedly let them down, or participate in the military justice system. But Bill C-11 denies them that right. Are you prepared to listen to victims, to listen to the Association of Canadian Police Chiefs, and agree to that amendment?
Look, I want to understand their perspectives, but I also am cognizant of the fact that the former Supreme Court justice that we've had look into this more or less described this as a false choice, because we see such a low level of reporting because of one system's existence that includes the fear of retribution, includes a history of failing victims, including potential interference within the chain of command, including the ability to share info with the military police throughout the process. A lot of people are making the choice not to come forward at all because of the personal consequences that might exist should they participate.
A lot of people are choosing not to come forward at all because of the last 10 years of failure, when we have so few victims of sexual assault. And I was in the trenches for part of that time, and I can tell you how difficult it is for a victim to navigate the system. Sections 276 through 278 of the Criminal Code are very difficult as it is. And from what I understand, Minister, only one of the three justices said that there should be no choice. Victims want a choice. The police want the choice. The Provost Marshal General suggests a choice. The Director of Defense Counsel Services wants a choice. But despite all that, Minister, We all want victims to be represented. I have no doubt that you want that. So why aren't we just going to listen to victims in this case and give them the choice?
So this is an important conversation, and listening to victims has to be part of the process. But it's not lost on me that Justice Arbour, in coming up with her recommendation, worked with many victims who have experience as well, and their voice should also be listened to, and trying to figure out the best path forward, informed not only by the lived experience of some witnesses who very courageously share their perspective, but also listening to the experts who've talked to 1,000 witnesses or more, victims or more, to inform the recommendations that they've been tasked to provide is an important part of the process. And I think
let's get into that, Minister. You talked about
the right solution.
I apologize for interrupting you. I do have limited time. Justice Arbour said that, but Justices Fish and Deschamps, both of whom sat on the Supreme Court of Canada, said that victims should have the choice. So on the one hand, you're prepared to listen to Justice Arbour's recommendation, and obviously we respect and thank the work she's done on human rights and on this. But two other justices said, no, give them the choice. And this panel has consistently had people come and say, give victims the choice. So if you're going to hang your hat on Justice Arbour's position, how can you ignore the position of Justice Fish, the position of Justice Deschamps, and the people who've appeared here at this committee? Why are you preferring one to the other, Minister?
Well, in addition to the extensive engagement that Justice Arbour undertook to land on this particular recommendation, the reasons that she attached to her report are compelling. When I understand that there is the real fear of reprisal within a person's career, when I understand that there's potential for interference within the chain of command, when I understand that very sensitive personal information can be shared outside of that particular justice process, it gives me real cause for concern that, on balance, at the end of the day, continuing through this broken system is going to do harm to more people. There is no perfect solution that will solve the epidemic of gender-based or sexual violence that exists in Canada overnight, but I believe sincerely that this is a path in the right direction to ensure that justice prevails.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Kluge.
Mr. Watchorn, you have up to 6 minutes, sir.
Training
exist will help give confidence to victims. Similarly, on a range of sexual offenses and offenses tied to the exploitation of children, the existence of those offenses will certainly give confidence. But we also will have better guidance for stronger penalties, both maximum and minimum, in circumstances involving sexual charges. But specifically, Bill 16, to your question, does two things that will very directly improve confidence in the system, not just in the law. The first is really around addressing the problem with delays, which has become, concerns have become exacerbated after the Jordan decision, which has seen almost 10,000 cases thrown out for delay. We can change that, both by shrinking the time, by improving the processes, but also having the courts look at remedies other than a stay of proceedings when there is delay. In addition, moving forward with changes to the Victims' Bill of Rights to give confidence that people know they will receive the information they're entitled to proactively, knowing that they will have access to those testimonial aids, knowing that they will have a voice, victims' impact statements, and even on parole when people are being moved from one level of security facility to another, making sure that they continue to have a right that's baked into the Victims' Bill of Rights will give a higher degree of confidence in the civilian system, to your question, though there are similar changes mirrored in a military context, will give confidence that they will be able to fully participate in the process and that there is more likely to be an outcome based on the evidence adduced at trial rather than a stay issued as a result of delays.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Est-ce qu'il reste encore du temps?
Thank you. Do I have any time left, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Ms. Gallant, you have up to 6 minutes.
And for you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister. So I never thought I'd hear the day the Liberals said they would deny a woman's right to choose. And they want choice in this matter. The concern is that the less egregious assaults will be they'll get away with it, and it just escalates over time. So have provisions been made so that the lesser assaults will be addressed fully within the military system, since they won't be addressed in the court system?
Before, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to be trying to meld together conversations about women's reproductive rights and the different court systems. And more broadly, I just find I find this point very important that I made it several times. I don't think it's a real choice that exists today. Justice Arbor's position on this explained that the so-called choice being presented to victims is one, if they go through the military justice system, is one that has a culture where there is very serious fears of reprisals, personal consequences that could come to the victim in their life and career outside of the criminal justice process, the potential for sensitive information to be shared about their assaults.
We've heard that from the witnesses themselves. So with that, recently we saw in the news that former General Denis Fortin was acquitted of what he was accused of. Had that taken place completely, if it had taken place in these actual civilian courts, he would not have the right to defense counsel, whereas the way it's handled now, they do. The people who are the accused are covered by military defense attorneys. So is there money going to be allocated to ensure that the people have the same rights and protection in having their court case defended as they do now through having the military defense counsel?
Look, I obviously can't comment on individual cases, but it would go through the civilian context. This is not a scenario where different governments cover the legal costs of defendants who find themselves before the court.
Actually, it is. But have you actually spoken or consulted with the Minister of National Defense prior to your introducing C-11 in the House?
We had spoken on a number of occasions and actually on an ongoing basis, because it's not just C-11 that has concern for a common problem that we're trying.
C-11, because you know we all talk with each other, but did you specifically speak about C-11?
In combination with other bills, yes.
Okay, so why hasn't the Minister of National Defense asked for your input on this particular bill?
We're members of the same cabinet. We have input on each other's decisions in all instances.
Okay. Have you assessed the impact of moving the misconduct cases from the military justice system to the civilian court system, including the cost and the greater possibility that the cases are going to be thrown out because they just run out of time due to the Jordan decision?
So we have considered, and when you look at the comparative volume of in the range of 100 cases annually in the military context compared to tens of thousands of complaints that are made publicly in the civilian context, the incremental difference for the system is not great, although the impact on the individuals is obviously of a significant magnitude. On the issue of the impact on delays, that is a problem that we want to solve, and the reforms that have been included in Bill C-16, we have confidence will have a meaningful impact to both reduce the delays that people experience and change the outcome as a result of the Jordan decision.
So when you take away the choice of where the case is going to be tried, what happens is it is often a career decision when a woman decides whether or not she is going to take the case and have it go forward. So if they don't have that choice, it condemns a number of women to being kicked out of the forces because they actually spoke. Has that been taken into consideration? And if so, have you spoken to victims about this?
So that is a real phenomenon that is motivating part of the decision to move away from the military justice system for these kinds of cases. And it's our view that when you present people with a system where superior officers potentially have the opportunity to engage in the justice system, where you have information that can be shared that's very sensitive, that can be shared throughout the chain of command, it creates a culture where the exact phenomenon you're concerned about impacts people's life and career, and we think there's a better
Point
balance.
of order. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, for the sake of the interpretation, I'd ask that the member allow the minister to answer so I can actually hear the translation. Thank you.
Please proceed, Minister.
Oh, sorry, that was my answer.
With that, when they have the chain of evidence, we've heard several situations where the chain of evidence was the evidence was thrown out because they didn't trust the chain and that it was secure that all the way through. So, what in C-11 ensures that any investigation, initial contact with a victim, will be preserved in such a way that it won't be thrown out of court?
Well, you would be dealing with the protections that exist within the criminal justice system more broadly. You have the opportunity to have an independent investigation. You have the opportunity to have the independent crowns who are going to be laying charges, be moving through the criminal justice process. And that system, in my view, being separated from the military justice system, being separated from the military chain of command, has a greater degree of independence than currently exists within the military system today.
There's still the transfer, and it's in the transfer of one system to the next where the evidence may be thrown out. So are there provisions in the bill to take care of that?
Yeah, but this who actually is going to be running the investigations will matter here. And when you have the ability to have the investigation to exist in an independent context, I have a greater degree of faith that the path forward will be an improvement in a civilian context. Than
Even if it happens in theater?
Well, there's a difference between what may happen inside of Canada and outside of Canada, and that is an area that may be helpful ground for this committee to study further.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Vivian Lapointe, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My Conservative colleagues seem to indicate that this is an either-or situation where you pit one witness testimony against another, and nothing can be further from the case. All witness testimony is important, and all of them go forward in developing the recommendations and the legislative changes that are before us today. Minister, earlier you mentioned opportunities with the provinces to improve the civilian justice system, and Bill C-16 introduces further measures to strengthen independence, oversight, accountability, and also within the military justice system. Can you tell us how C-16 complements the reforms in C-11 and responds to some of the concerns raised about consistency, transparency, and trust in the complaint and investigative process?
Certainly. And so I mentioned at the outset that when we sit down to try to identify the right legislative path forward as a government, we're trying very hard to work across departments to break down silos, and we're trying to focus the conversation on what problem we are trying to solve rather than who's got a responsibility for what policy. In this instance, we're trying to solve a very real problem with victims in both the civilian and military context who don't feel comfortable coming forward reporting sexual assaults or sexual offenses more broadly, with victims who, when they enter the system, often at the end of the day don't receive justice. In a military context, that obviously can have a very serious impact on a person's life and career. In a civilian context, there are other challenges that we're addressing through delays, for example. Some of the ways that we're trying to bring these together is having the common adoption of new offenses that happens, it's incorporated by reference in a military context, but also by addressing things like delays through similar means, adjusting the Victims' Bill of Rights and the equivalent entitlement to certain processes in a military context. We want to ensure, regardless of which system a person finds himself in, and regardless of the context in which an assault takes place, that people have access to a system that will be run independently, that they trust, that will allow them to see justice at the end of the day. Have not only to the...
It's not a point, but proceed, Mr. Minister.
Certainly, and look, I'll wait for the direction of the House to determine which committee will be studying which bill, and I expect fully I will appear at one committee or another on all of the bills that I have responsibility for, and in this instance, some bills that my colleagues have responsibility for. I'm happy to show up at these things, and I honestly believe Parliament has a role to improve the quality of legislation that's gone forward. I know Mr. Caputo is no longer here, but my experience working on his private member's bill showed that collaboration can help strengthen legislation to hopefully get to a point where multiple parties can be supporting changes that are in the best interest of victims of crime.
Chair, I'd like to go back to my time of asking questions of the Minister. Some witnesses highlighted gaps around information sharing, time.
C-16. Thank you. Choice between the two military and civilian justice systems, and you only focus on Justice Arbour's report. I think that everybody's voices should be included. I think that all of those recommendations should be included and not just cherry picking. Victims have said overwhelmingly they will not bring many of their cases forward to civilian courts, including the low-level ones. In fact, many of them have reported that their cases have been turned away from the civilian system.
Why will you not hear their voices of everyone, hear the majority of voices, and why do you insist on taking away choice so that victims can choose? And this is military sexual trauma, which is very different than just sexual trauma. Why do you insist on taking away that choice from them between those two systems?
So, very respectfully, I have a sincerely held different view. The choice that I see playing out right now in the military context is for so many people not to come forward at all. It's for the reasons that I've outlined. Mr. Chair, do I have time to offer a response similar to the length of the question?
This isn't about your view. This is about the view of victims of military sexual trauma. And we've had
Mr. Chair, do I have an opportunity to offer responses?
Yeah. My apologies, Chair, but interpreters cannot do the work that they need to do when we have two people talking over each other.
Mr. Kibble, I'll give you a few extra minutes, but I'll let the Minister respond, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On this issue, my view is informed by the reports that have engaged 1,000 victims or more. My conclusion is that there are many, many people who are choosing not to come forward for the reasons that I've articulated previously in this session. That includes the fear of reprisals. It includes a lack of independence when you have actors in the justice system who are subject to the chain of command. There are very real consequences to a person's life and a career that's causing them not to come forward. When we see 100 cases nationally in that ballpark coming forward, I expect that there's a significant number that go unreported compared to the tens of thousands that we see reported across the country in a civilian context. I'm not arguing one system is perfect. I think there is a better path than exists today.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, but this shouldn't be about your view of this. This should be about the view of the victims, and I appreciate you've heard from thousands of victims, and overwhelmingly they have supported choice. I've also, earlier in your testimony, I was glad to hear that you said that civilian police have appropriate training in dealing with sexual assault. I think that's very important, and that they're trauma-informed, and you acknowledge that. However, military sexual trauma is very different. Police, including the Victoria Police Chief, have said that police services, and they deal with multiple, the potential to deal with the cases at CFB Esquimalt, second largest base in Canada. Victoria Police Chief has said that they would need specialized training in dealing with military sexual trauma, that they would need funding to support the extra work that they do not have the capability to deal with. These are hundreds of cases potentially that are coming. Will the government give them support, ensure that they have the training dealing with military sexual trauma and its differences, dealing with different evidence handling, records, personal records, and access to information? Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have programs that support this kind of training through the Victims Fund. Whether there will be an application forthcoming, I'm not aware of that. But that is an opportunity for us to actually work to ensure that there is appropriate level of training for people who understand the unique context. And I accept the context would be different in a military context.
So thank you that there's a training available. But I'm speaking specifically of funding in the millions of dollars that civilian police forces and provincial justice systems are going to need to take on this extra load and this extra training. Will the government provide those millions of dollars? We've even considered or asked anybody about that extra load and training and dollars that will be needed to support this just being thrown onto the civilian justice system.
Well, the creation of the Victims Fund was partially motivated by the need to address these very specific kinds of things, because we're seeing specialized courts pop up in different parts of the country to address these kinds of concerns. We don't obviously have a funding announcement to make at this parliamentary committee hearing, because we would require an application to come in, to be assessed, to actually work with the proponent who would be seeking to tap into these federal funding opportunities. So there are funding opportunities there, to answer your question directly. Whether we have a specific one in Victoria for the local police force or court systems would depend on engagements that would need to take place in advance of funding applications.
Mr. Anderson, thank you. I know that you added some.
Yeah, it's expired. Okay, go, Mr. Anderson, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Ask one question.
Well, I don't have one question. I've got a bunch of questions.
We'll have to wait for your time if that's the case. Mr. Mallette, you now have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And we've been listening this morning to our friends across the way who were suggesting that there's an apparent overwhelming majority, I guess, as we're hearing of witnesses and victims who have testified here, that they could not get adequate redress in either system or in the military. They want the choice to go. But I would suggest we've heard just as much testimony or as in-depth testimony of victims who were assaulted, Mr. Minister, who feared the system in which they were assaulted is now the system in which they're seeking redress for that assault, but they're doing so before the very people or the very institution in which they were assaulted. And this has been consistently some of the observations I've made in our deliberations here on this matter. Specifically that, and I've drawn this parallel before, that women, in the cases of the sexual assault courts-martial that I myself have witnessed, they were all women involved. They were women in uniform, filing a complaint with someone in the same uniform, appearing before a tribunal of everyone wearing the same uniform. My question then is, where is the trust if we limit it, if we don't remove it from that system, is I guess the fundamental choice or question here.
Look, first, you sort of in your preamble described questions coming from our friends, and I think that's important to remind. I think we are friends who want the same outcomes, and what we have to figure out is the right path to obtain those outcomes. You make a very important point. It's hard for a person to have trust in the system where their assault took place if they know that there is a chain of command that exists in which that complaint will take place. And within that chain of command, there are individuals who would potentially have the authority to severely limit the personal consequences outside of the criminal implications of the assault that they may have lived through. You can imagine putting yourself in the shoes of someone in that system who says, if I open my mouth, I could be fired. I could be denied a promotion. I'm going to be chastised by my peers. Putting this entire process in the hands of the independent civilian process, which will not be subject to the chain of command, is not only going to lead to potentially better outcomes for the people who do come forward, but potentially to more people coming forward because they'll have greater trust in the independence of the system. I think that is precisely the right point.
Yes, and further to that, I think we have heard testimony from at least one witness who testified exactly to that point, and in fact, it was the complainant, the victim's immediate superior officer, who was alleged and to have perpetrated the offense. If I can move along to, we heard witnesses talk about the importance of having specialized resources for sexual violence crimes, but also that judges need the necessary training to handle these types of cases. Minister, what training is currently available in the civil system, and are we looking at methods of enhancing that training?
Certainly. And look, before we get into the specific resources that are available, knowing that there is a system that has the expertise to handle these kinds of cases is key to developing that trust that I referred to in my response to your last question. My first few years as a member of Parliament, I sat on the Status of Women Committee, and we conducted a lengthy study about the experience of women who've been subjected to gender-based violence, and the lack of expertise in policing amongst Crown prosecutors within the courts is a major problem within the justice system more broadly. The level of training that exists and the level of specialization. Sorry, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Anderson, we can hear you. Just keep it down. Thank you.
May I continue? Thank you. The level of training and expertise that exists can be inconsistent as between different provinces in Canada within the civilian system, which is something that we should seek to address and borrow best practices from one another. But you are seeing some unique practices emerged. One of our colleagues referenced the specialized tribunals that exist in Quebec. There are other provinces that are launching specialized courts to deal with these kinds of cases. We have made resources available for these kinds of training, but we're not trying to predetermine for provinces where they should be spending resources. We're trying to put funds on the table to say, when you develop with full knowledge of the culture that exists within your region, with the ability to actually deliver results with those training, we're making resources available to help address the priorities that emerge at a local level that will best meet the challenges that exist at a local level.
Yeah, and further, well, sorry.
Mr. Mallett, that's time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Anderson, back to you now.
Oh, good. Thank you, Minister. Do you have any military experience?
No, I've not served in the military.
Okay. Do you understand the difference between chain of command and the military prosecution system?
I know that those are distinct concepts, but in this instance, there could be interplay.
Well, not really. You've used the term within the chain of command, interference within the chain of command. How do you understand the chain of command relationship?
In general terms?
In general terms.
That you would have a reporting officer that you would take orders from, and they may have a officer superior to them, and so on.
And what is the relationship to the military justice system?
Well, there is potential for information sharing.
No, not
that
potential. What is the relationship between the two?
So my concern is not just...
No, but I'm asking you what your understanding of the relationship is between the chain of command and the military justice system.
Though there are distinctions, my concern is that there is information that can bleed between one and the next, and that the folks who act within the chain of command could have reprisals come to the individual who makes a complaint within the military justice system.
Okay. Well, that's extremely tenuous given the relationship between the two of them. Are you aware that each case transferred to the civilian system has hundreds of hours of investigatory hours attached to it?
It would depend on the specifics of the individual case, but it would be possible, certainly, depending on how far advanced the investigation is.
We're transferring 100 cases there. It's as if it's nothing compared to the tens of thousands. It actually is. It's if you do the math, it's...
I don't want to be understood to say that it's nothing. Every one of those cases is a big deal and is very meaningful, particularly to the individuals involved. The comparative volume is a factor that we should consider.
And you have heard the Chief of Police of Victoria saying that they simply can't handle this without any resources.
And I think that we would need to understand how to make sure that the civilian system is equipped to handle these, but some of the changes that we're making will improve
by
that.
transferring money to them?
Potentially through the training programs that I've discussed at this committee earlier, but also by changing the processes to speed up the process of getting through trial and to avoid the consequences of stays for delay.
Okay, I want to return to choice here. The idea that removing choice is a benefit to the victim, that to me seems to be one of the most paternalistic, almost mansplaining, that we shouldn't have a choice, in spite of the fact that every victim, except for one that has turned up here, has said that they prefer a choice, that they would feel much more secure having a choice, that there are many incidences in which they may want to remain within the system. Furthermore, we heard testimony from the military justice system itself, both the prosecution and the defense and the Provost Marshal, that they have the capacity, that the culture has changed over the past 5 years or 10 years, that they are significantly more ready to prosecute these things in the military, if necessary, if the victim chooses to do that. I cannot think of a good... we seem to be going around in circles. You're giving us all sorts of reasons why you feel that this, in spite of the evidence and in spite of the testimony... Are you prepared to maybe make a choice if you re-examine the evidence that victims should have a choice? Is that open in your mind at all, or is this a closed book?
So the evidence that we've reviewed includes the report that was commissioned for the specific purpose of
several
addressing
reports,
this challenge.
many of which have thousands of victims. That's not the question. Are you prepared to contemplate putting choice back into this bill?
My point of view, informed by the reports that were commissioned to address this issue, is that the system will be improved on the whole if we move the sexual offenses into a civilian context.
You intend to remove choice?
There is a false choice that exists. You continue to say
no, sir, there is not a false choice.
The choice so many people are making right now is not to come forward because they do not believe it will result in justice. They believe that they will be re-traumatized.
Tell me what happens then, because nobody else can seem to answer this. On a low level thing, we've removed jurisdiction from the military for sexual assault. Is that correct? In C11? It says that we have.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. There's some unique context around the interim directive and the process that continues to exist today, but...
That's correct. Yeah. And so a low-level thing, a pat on the bum, is not going to be prosecuted. Yeah, we've got that definitely from one of the justices that appeared here. 2 pats on the bum probably won't be prosecuted as a criminal offense. What does the victim do? How are you planning to change the culture in the military if all of the low-level stuff is simply ignored because the military doesn't have jurisdiction to deal with it?
Well, I still think that it's important that you maintain a complaints process. There's
To who?
Well, it will depend on the context. Sometimes, if there's a serious sexual
What
assault,
context?
it could be a
Minister,
full-blown
sorry,
prosecution.
we're going to be wrapping up soon. Sherry Ramanado, last point, and then we'll suspend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I'd like to thank the Minister for coming today. Minister, you know I have 2 sons and a daughter-in-law serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. We also know that in 1998, we moved from the civilian system to the Canadian Armed Forces, the investigation and prosecutions of sexual assault. We also know that from 1998 until 2021, when we had significant reckoning in the Canadian Armed Forces, that many members of the Canadian Armed Forces who were victims of sexual assault never came forward, as you said, in terms of a false choice. Their choice was to stay quiet or risk losing their job, being ridiculed. They've chose to serve this country, and they did not come forward because they knew they had no choice. And we heard that in testimony. In 2021, we had the interim directive to move these investigations and the prosecutions to civilian courts. We've implemented a significant culture change. At that time, the CDS also engaged with over 14,000 members of the Canadian Armed Forces and former members to get their input in terms of how we should move forward in changing that culture. The goal is not about making sure that investigations and prosecutions happen. It is to ensure that this behavior stops. We are asking men and women to put their lives on the line. We're asking families that support members of the Canadian Armed Forces to trust the system. There was no trust in the system in 2021. We are rebuilding that. My question to you, other than the RCMP, is there any other workplace that would investigate and prosecute their own? I don't believe there is. And that is why we are moving with C11 to give victims, both male and female, justice. And it's also improving the culture in the Canadian Armed Forces. Would you agree that with the implementation of C11 and that recommendation strictly from Arbor's report to make sure that the prosecution and investigations are taken out of the hands of the Canadian Armed Forces, moved to the civilian system, will help bring back the importance of believing in the system, trust in the system, and faith in the system?
In a word, yes. If you'll allow me what time I have remaining, Chair, you're right to focus on solving the problem and not just choosing one system or another. And trust is an essential ingredient to solving this problem. Switching to one system overnight is not going to solve the problem in and of itself, but it is an essential first step if we're going to rebuild that trust, which will take time. Now, we're also going to need to address very serious systemic challenges that exist within the civilian system, no question. But from where I sit, having seen the report, having seen the engagement with 14,000 members of the CAF, having seen 1,000 victims participate in Justice Arbor's considerations, it's pretty clear that the existing system's not working. Whether it could even be rebuilt with all the resources in the world, given the fundamental lack of trust, is a very real question. And I've concluded that it's not possible for people to see trust when they believe that there will be reprisals for speaking out. In addition to the impact on the individual victim who doesn't see justice, at a time when we're trying to recruit actively people to join the Canadian Armed Forces, telling women that their experience will be something different than what it has historically been would not be honest. People will leave service. People will not join service. And if they go through a traumatic experience such as sexual assault, the incentive is to stay quiet Otherwise, you may be punished. This is not justice. This is a system that will simply not serve the interests of the country, the forces, or the individual. So, in my view, it's an essential path forward to move this into a civilian context, but we need to do lots of additional work after we make that essential change.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you all for your participation, to the other witnesses as well. I will suspend for a few moments.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, welcome to the Senate. Earlier this week, Canadians were stunned by reports out of the Greater Toronto Area describing a police operation to disrupt a dual responsibility for robbing graves and mausoleums. Police have counted more than 300 thefts so far, including jewelry pieces containing human remains. Minister, it's unimaginable that after a decade of Liberal governance, Canada has reached a point where not even the dead are safe from criminal activity. Families already grieving their losses must now fear that their loved ones' resting places will be desecrated. It's really heart-wrenching. Minister, let's call this what it is. It's a complete failure of our public safety and criminal justice system. Why can't the government take the safety of Canadians seriously and finally step up to address the crime crisis unfolding in communities from coast to coast to coast?
Question.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you sincerely, Senator, for the question, and thank you all for the kind invitation to have an important conversation with you today. Obviously, public safety is a pressing priority for the Government of Canada. It's a pressing priority, frankly, for Canadians in every part of the country. The circumstances that you described are clearly heinous examples of criminal misbehavior that need to be addressed with serious penalties, but ideally with prevention that actually stops crime from happening before it takes place. The strategy that we're moving forward with has several pillars. The first is to have stronger laws to ensure that people who commit serious crimes face serious penalties. The second is to ensure, Senator, that we properly resource the front line. For our part, 1,000 new RCMP officers, 1,000 new border officers will help make a meaningful difference. But finally, we have to engage in the upstream investments, whether it's mental health and addiction support, affordable housing, supportive housing, or importantly, programs that target at-risk youth to prevent people from engaging criminal lifestyles to begin with. These are not easy solutions, but I have all the faith in the world that if we give law enforcement the tools to do their job, work across levels of government and across political party affiliations, we can advance meaningful reforms that will not only punish wrongdoers for these kinds of heinous acts, but will prevent crime from taking place in the first place.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, when criminals feel emboldened enough to desecrate graves hundreds of times without fear of consequences, that tells us everything that we need to know about the state of law and order under our government. This is what a decade of weakened sentencing, lax enforcement, and catch-and-release justice has produced. Minister, you must admit that your approach over the last decade is just not working. We need to commit to restoring real consequences for crimes and criminals before Canadians lose all confidence in our judicial system.
Senator, you may be surprised in our points of agreement that we believe that when serious crimes take place, the perpetrators should face serious penalties. These are not just words on my part, but backed by actions, including the introduction of Bill C-14, which adopts stronger bail measures, particularly targeting violent repeat offenders, stronger sentences, again, for those who would commit serious crimes, aggravating factors for people who would target certain harms that actually would reverberate through the entirety of the community. I completely agree that serious penalties can act as a deterrent to help stop crime from taking place in the future, but that is only part of the equation. We need as well to ensure that the front line is properly supported and that we make those upstream investments if we want to, in fact, not just change over the next year or two, though we are seeing crime rates come down in the past year, but we actually solve these kinds of challenges over the course of a generation.
Senator Simons.
Thank you very much, Minister. Down here. My question is about C9, the Combating Hatred Act. In the Act, you make it a criminal offense for someone to display a symbol that is primarily associated with a listed entity. And the listed entities include things such as the Bishnoi Gang, Tren de Agua, organizations that are more commonly thought of as organized crime organizations, as well as political extremist groups like the Kurdistan Workers' Party or the Shining Path. But the list doesn't include such notable hate groups as the KKK, which would mean that displaying a burning cross or a noose would not be captured by C9. And I'm wondering if you could explain to me why your department decided to use the listed entity list as a proxy for hate groups.
Thank you very much, Senator, for the question. Just one point of clarity before I address the specific point you've made about the groups that you've referenced. We did not criminalize simply the display of certain symbols, but criminalized the willful promotion of hate through the display of those symbols. Of course, if someone willfully promotes hate today through the use of those symbols or otherwise, there is the potential for criminal liability that could attach to those acts of hate should they meet the existing definitions within the criminal code. The question you posed about which symbols are included on the list for that additional charge is an interesting and important one. I look forward to the benefit of the deliberations of the various parliamentary committees, whether in the House of Commons or Senate, that may seek to improve these bills. The reason that we've chosen to limit it to certain objective criteria, those specifically which are listed terrorist entities in the criminal code, is to ensure that this is not subject to the political whims of the governments of the day, but is tied to some pre-existing standard that can evolve on an evergreen basis based on the decisions taken by the national security apparatus. Should those decisions evolve over time to group new organizations into the definition, of course, in an automatic way, we would expect those symbols to be incorporated by reference. This is something that I don't intend to be dogmatic about. I had the opportunity to meet this morning with the Steering Committee for the Black Justice Strategy, who've raised similar concerns. Should parliamentarians determine that there is a better path forward, please know that I would accept those recommendations in good faith.
Senator Simons.
I mean, this does beg a question. If you are going to use a list which was created for a completely different purpose and transpose it into this legislation, surely you will always have a problem that there are people on that list who are not hate groups, and there are hate groups that will never qualify to be on that list. Right. So what remedy would you suggest is available, because the mechanism in the legislation seems not fit for purpose?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Look, thank you, and let me reiterate the invitation for parliamentarians in either house to offer feedback in ways by virtue of amendments that this bill can be improved. You realize when you try to ring fence issues as complex as hate, there is no one perfect definition that the entire world is going to agree upon. What we wanted to do was strive to achieve some level of objectivity to avoid this becoming a political decision that governments down the road, 10, 20, 50 years from now, could use in a way that may not necessarily reflect the policy outcomes that we're hoping to achieve today. We thought it was a fairly safe bet to start with listed terrorist entities and the Nazi Party in particular, but should there be other definitions to better capture groups that actually promote hate, please know that I would be very interested in the feedback of this chamber.
Merci, Monsieur. Senator Martin.
Hello, Minister, right here. After 10 years of the Liberal government, most Canadians no longer feel safe in their own neighbourhoods. So it's no surprise that a recent poll shows that 87% of Canadians believe they should have the right to defend themselves and their families with reasonable force against an intruder. Yet after the home invasion case in Lindsay, Ontario, last August, where a homeowner was charged for defending his own home, Canadians are now more confused and more anxious. They are left wondering whether the law will protect them or punish them when their safety is on the line. So, Minister, if your government cannot keep Canadians safe by keeping high-risk offenders off our streets, will you at least provide the legal clarity needed so Canadians can exercise their fundamental right to self-defense in a way that genuinely protects their homes and their families?
Good question. Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you. This is an important question, and I think you've correctly outlined the appropriate legal test in your question. And let me be unequivocal.
Canadians have the ability to defend themselves in their homes today through their use of reasonable force. And some of these cases, as they make themselves into the public fora through reporting, invite conversations suggesting that no such law exists today. The law that's on the books today was actually put in place by a previous Conservative government, despite being a Liberal. I think that was the right thing to do. We need to ensure that the laws enable people to protect them in their homes, but then we need to ensure that we put systems in place that ensure that there is a public responsibility to protect Canadians more broadly in their communities. This is going to involve some of the reforms that we are now advancing through Parliament through Bill C-14, C-9, upcoming legislation. It's also going to involve more resources by different levels of government in the front line of law enforcement, and it's going to require those upstream investments. But to the point of your question, just to be unequivocal once again, Canadians have the right to use reasonable force to defend themselves and others in their home should they be facing an attack that takes place.
Senator Martin.
Yes, but Minister, Canadians watched a homeowner do everything to protect himself in the face of an armed intruder, yet he ended up the one facing charges. So that sends a chilling message to every law-abiding citizen across this country. So Minister, will you commit to reviewing the criminal code provisions on self-defense to ensure that Canadians defending their families are not treated like criminals while real criminals walk free?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Look, without offering commentary on the specifics of the case, I think it's important that we trust the police to exercise their discretion in circumstances where it's appropriate, while we still recognize that the law includes today the exact features that you're calling for. The use of reasonable force is permitted. In addition to confirming that that law exists and we do not intend to erode it one iota, we have to advance additional provisions that protect people against home invasions. Specifically in Bill C-14, both on the sentencing side and on bail reform, we are going to have tougher penalties and harder bail conditions when it comes to people who are facing charges for violent home invasion. And of course, harsher sentences for those who commit violent home invasions. It's a complex area, but to be clear, the law provides the exact remedy that you've asked for in your question, the use of reasonable force to protect yourself in your home.
Senator Batters.
Minister Fraser, your Liberal government promised during the April election that, quote, every measure in your platform would be implemented with a, quote, full GBA plus analysis. Before Mark Carney became the Prime Minister, there were more than 100 mentions of gender-based analysis and, plus in mandate letters to cabinet ministers. And now it has been completely erased from Prime Minister Carney's universal mandate letter to ministers. A GBA plus analysis used to be available online when a government bill was introduced in Parliament. Now they are nowhere to be seen, including with your Bill C-9. The previous Trudeau government was a fake feminist government that paid lip service to the equality rights of women. That government, of which you were a key part, was infamous for its multitude of broken promises. Is your so-called new government just carrying on this fine Liberal tradition?
Monsieur le Ministre.
It will not come as a surprise. I have a different characterization of the role of gender-based analysis and the high regard with which we hold the need to consider the feminist perspective when adopting different policies. We do still conduct gender-based analyses to understand the unique impact of decisions that we take as governments on women and women from different backgrounds to ensure that we're looking at those intersecting grounds of discrimination. We also have made the decision to reinstitute funding for women and gender equality to continue to not only consider the impacts as we're developing laws, but to support the organizations who are on the front line helping advance the rights of women and communities. We may disagree on the success or failure of those policies, but rest assured it's an ever-present feature of the political conversations we have when we make decisions about which laws to adopt in Canada.
Senator Batters.
Well, so the gender-based analysis now is secret. Minister, for the last 10 years, your government claimed that GBA Plus is a key lens for evaluating legislation, and you promised to conduct this analysis, but there's now nothing public for parliamentarians and Canadians to review. In so many areas, the Carney government is even less transparent than the Trudeau government was. Are you keeping your GBA Plus analysis secret because it has nothing favourable to say about your government's legislation?
Monsieur le Ministre.
No. Look, I don't think that we have to turn gender-based violence or gender considerations into a partisan exercise. If you wish to, I can point out that the Conservative Party of Canada voted against the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence. I would rather have a conversation about what decisions we're actually going to make to advance the rights of women, advance the well-being of Canadians. We want to continue to understand the impacts that our laws are going to have on people from different walks of life, from different life experiences, and for that reason, I think the gender-based choice analyses is still an important tool that is used to strengthen the impact that our laws are going to have.
Senator Houssakos.
Minister, earlier this fall I introduced Bill S-236, a bill to amend the Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights and establish an enforceable framework for the implementation of victims' rights in Canada. This is work that many victims advocates and frankly many parliamentarians expected the federal government to complete since the Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights was adopted in 2015. Yet it's been over a decade. No concrete legislative mechanism has been put into place to make these rights meaningful and enforceable. Why has your government not acted in almost 10 years to meaningfully strengthen victims' rights? And why has it fallen to individual parliamentarians and not your department, the Department of Justice, to move this forward for victims who desperately need some support?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you sincerely for the question and more importantly for your concern for the victims of crime in this country. There's a bill I've now, at risk of being a broken record, cited a few times that we will be tabling over the next number of weeks. There's a number of different issues, may include in that bill or subsequent legislation that we wish to target. I've mentioned intimate partner violence, protecting kids online. We will also be seeking to address delays in the justice system, but importantly, an additional component that we're seeking to address through legislation are reforms to the Victims' Bill of Rights. People ought to know to what information they are entitled. People ought to have access to certain testimonial aids to take part in the process. People should be understanding what remedies they have, not just in a criminal context, but in a civil context when they are victimized by crime. This is an issue that is extremely important. It has the attention not only of individual parliamentarians, but the Government of Canada, and the Department of Justice is fully seized with the issue and putting together potential reforms as we speak.
Senator Houssakos.
Minister, we've been also sounding like a broken record here for a decade when it comes to victims' rights. And if your government is truly committed to improving victims' rights, how do you explain that in your own department's report on the Status Repeal Act, one of the provisions scheduled for repeal is a section explicitly designed to make access to information easier for victims, including information about release conditions, temporary absences, and potential proximity to the offenders? How can the government claim to support victims when at the same time it's choosing to repeal a provision specifically designed to protect them, a provision that was never even brought into force in the first place?
Monsieur le Ministre.
The piece of legislation that you're referring to is happens annually. It's a mechanism of good governance to clean up laws that were never brought into force. Some of these laws are not brought into force for good reasons. Others sit on the books and are not actually doing any good to help people. I wouldn't read too much into what is a formulaic repeal of legislation that's never been brought into force when we can actually point simultaneously to the initiatives that I've mentioned that will be introduced through legislation to amend the Victims' Bill of Rights. To the extent that you have follow-up questions on the statutes that were not brought into force but have been repealed, I'd be happy to follow up and answer whatever questions your office may have offline.
Senator Carignan.
Monsieur le ministre, le 31 octobre 2025, dans l'arrêt Sandville, la Cour suprême, dans une décision partagée de 5-4, a invalidé les peines minimales obligatoires d'1 an d'emprisonnement pour possession de pornographie juvénile et accès à de la pornographie juvénile en déclarant la peine inconstitutionnelle. C'est un jugement qui a profondément choqué une grande partie de la population canadienne. Ma question est simple. Est-ce que le gouvernement libéral entend réagir à cette décision en ayant recours à l'outil constitutionnel que représente la clause dérogatoire, ou bien s'est-il volontairement privé de cette possibilité-là en intervenant contre la loi 21 du Québec devant la Cour suprême? Je rappelle, au prix de 2 millions de dollars pour 22 pages d'argumentaire.
Monsieur le ministre.
Merci pour la question. Je vais déposer un projet de loi qui adressait la décision de la Cour suprême du Canada très vite. When we're dealing with sexual crimes against children, sexual exploitation and abuse material, we are dealing with some of the most heinous crimes that exist in Canada. The criminal law should respond and punish those who are abusing children and committing these horrible acts of violence against kids. The Supreme Court identified a fairly narrow area that gave them concern about the constitutionality. I believe that we can address that fairly simply through the constitutional tools that are available and are at our disposal today. And I think we can act more quickly by operating within the boundaries of the Constitution without necessarily immediately going to the notwithstanding clause in order to address this specific and acute need to act. There is a gap that has been left after the Senville decision. We're going to fill that gap, and we're going to do it very quickly.
Sénateur Carignan.
Je prends acte de votre réponse, Monsieur le ministre, mais quelles sont les mesures concrètes que vous envisagez à ce moment-là pour garantir que les peines minimales liées à la pornographie juvénile demeurent suffisamment dissuasives et reflètent la gravité des crimes? Parce qu'au-delà du débat politique, il y a une exigence qui est morale ici, vous l'avez bien souligné, c'est celle de protéger les enfants avec beaucoup de fermeté.
Monsieur le ministre.
Alors, sur l'enjeu de l'impératif moral, je suis tout à fait d'accord. Ce n'est pas un enjeu partisan. Il est essentiel pour chaque Canadien de défendre nos enfants, les personnes qui sont plus vulnérables dans nos sociétés. Pour les stratégies pour adresser les décisions de la Cour suprême du Canada, nous finalisons maintenant les proposals pour adresser la situation. J'ai besoin d'avoir des conversations avec mes collègues du cabinet et avancer le projet de loi dans la Chambre des communes. Il y a des enjeux qui concernent les parliamentary privilege of my colleagues. I wish to have the opportunity to complete the policy development process put forward.
In 2015, there were 382,000 incidents of violent crime. In 2024, there were almost 592,000. That's a 55% increase. Any way you slice it, Minister, is an objective fact that crime is worse now than it was in 2015. Are you willing to accept reality, or are you going to choose to remain oblivious to what's happening in this country?
Look, I can
Thank you, Chair. Minister Fraser, Justice officials, welcome to Justice Committee. Minister, since your government took office in 2015, crime in this country has been spiraling out of control. Violent crime up 55%, homicides up 30%, sex assaults up 76%, gun crime up 130%, and extortion, shockingly, up 330%. And yet, over the last 570 days, your government has only introduced 2 justice bills, C-63 and C-9, neither of which do anything to address the revolving door for violent repeat offenders. Why, Minister, after a year and a half, is your first legislative priority a bill that restricts free speech instead of protecting Canadians from violent repeat offenders?
Mr. Chair, with enormous respect to my colleague, I view the question to diminish the importance of the legislation that we're here to discuss today. Treating hate crimes as something less than urgent when members of affected communities are experiencing painful realities as a result of the hate that is lobbied upon them is not, in my view, the appropriate way to engage in this conversation. For the members' information, as we've discussed privately, we expect this fall, granted I've been in this position for a matter of a few months, most of which the House wasn't sitting, but this fall we have tabled the legislation we're here to discuss today. Within a matter of weeks, we will have one of the most comprehensive sets of reforms when it comes to the bail system and tougher sentences that our country has seen in many years, and a third bill before Christmas regarding intimate partner violence, sexual offences, and the role of victims in this process.
Mr. Brock, I understand that the minister should be succinct in his answers, but just let him finish his thought.
Yes, I'm taking a look at the time it took me to pose the question, sir, and I've given him actually an extra 10 seconds to respond.
Go ahead.
Do I have my time?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Minister, in 2015, there were 382,000 incidents of violent crime. In 2024, there were almost 592,000. That's a 55% increase. Any way you slice it, Minister, is an objective fact that crime is worse now than it was in 2015. Are you willing to accept reality, or are you going to choose to remain oblivious to what's happening in this country?
Look, I can recognize that crime and violent crime is a problem in Canada. That's why we are moving forward with an ambitious legislative agenda that's going to toughen the criminal justice system. But it's important that we realize that there are additional solutions. In addition to our changes to the bail and sentencing regime that you'll see in a matter of weeks, you're also going to see investments in the front line with 1,000 new RCMP officers, 1,000 new border officials, and more prosecutors. But we also have a view of the long-term need to prevent crime by making investments upstream that will tackle opportunities to pull at-risk youth out of the system, to invest in supportive housing, and to deal with mental health and addictions. But I think it's clear that we need to take action to toughen Canada's criminal laws to punish people who commit serious crimes.
Minister, Conservatives have introduced nearly 20 justice and public safety bills this Parliament alone on bail reform, sex assault, intimate partner violence, and organized crime, amongst others, while your government has tabled just 2. Are you going to support any private member bills introduced by the Conservative Party?
We don't have a blanket rule on supporting or rejecting bills based on the source of those proposed legal changes. We instead consider independently each of the measures that are brought forward by members, regardless of which party they may come from. I've had productive conversations, not only with you as my critic, Mr. Brock, with our colleague, Mr. Caputo, as well, and I'm willing to work in good faith. If there are certain challenges that cause us to believe that the proposed reforms will not make communities safe or would be blatantly unconstitutional,
Thank you, Minister.
I will have challenges.
Thank you, Minister. Will you commit today to repealing the principle of restraint under Section 493.1 of the Criminal Code to stop repeat violent offenders from being released back onto our streets? Yes or no?
You should expect to see changes to the way the principle of restraint is codified in the criminal code. I would point out that a repeal of the principle is not necessarily the appropriate language, given that the principle of restraint is recognized in common law and upheld by the Supreme Court of Canada.
So I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Minister.
And we will be making changes.
Thank you, Minister. Last month, in response to the Conservative announcement of the Stand on Guard policy, you tweeted out, quote, "This isn't the Wild West, it's Canada." Around the same time that you tweeted out this tone-deaf statement, in Hamilton alone, more than 80 shots rang out at bars after they were closing, leaving 3 injured. In Toronto, a 19-year-old was shot and killed in a mall bathroom. 2 17-year-olds were charged. In Ottawa, a Jewish woman in her 70s was stabbed and sent to hospital just for being Jewish. In Calling Lake, Alberta, a man wanted on a Canada-wide arrest warrant was charged in a violent home invasion where the homeowner was shot and killed. If these and thousands of other crime stories that are happening around this country on a weekly basis aren't indicative of the Wild West, what would meet your definition, sir?
This is an important conversation. Canadians should know that they have the right to defend themselves under the law in their homes if they are faced with such circumstances as you've described. And they have the ability to use force to do so when it is reasonably necessary. Jurisdictions that have adopted the proposal that you've suggested have not become more safe and have created new dangers. And just a few weeks ago in Texas, there was a 12-year-old boy killed by someone who thought he might have been an invader when he was playing Nicky Nicky Nine Door. You hear stories about people who are mistaken for invaders, who are delivering packages. What we're saying is where there is a set of circumstances that is unreasonable, the police should be able to make an independent decision. The law that was put in place by Stephen Harper, and it's a law that I actually support. You have the right to defend yourself in your home. I would remind colleagues that we have an opportunity to discuss the hate legislation that we brought forward. I hope subsequent questioners will take that issue as seriously as the government does.
So I want you to understand, everyone in this room to understand that and take that and get over your partisan bullshit. Get over it.
Any visual or written materials that she is comfortable with to the committee?
You want me to show it on my phone right now?
No,
I've got it. We can play it.
it wouldn't be understanding what you're suggesting, Ms. Alexander. I don't think it would be appropriate at this moment, but certainly you could submit it to the chair and to the.
I was screaming for my
committee.
life for Michael to stop. We can play the video if you want. Put it on the big screen.
Oh yeah. Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. These committee meetings sometimes are laughable, but this one is not. We've got Kate Alexander as the star witness. Larry Brock, Andrew Lawton are amazing. Mark Miller's amazing too, but in a different way. He's a slime ball. Wait until you see this loser chair. Kate Alexander has a lot to say. Larry Brock, Andrew Lawton are trying to expose the consequences of these Liberal policies. Go get him, Kate Alexander. You're a stud to me.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Over to you, Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for your attendance, particularly the witnesses who are here advocating on behalf of family members and personal experiences. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. In fact, my entire Conservative team will always stand in solidarity over victims, over accused, always. And one thing I want to highlight, and I feel like a broken record when I say this, the number one responsibility for a federal government is to keep us safe. This federal government, under the so-called leadership of Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney, to you, Ms. Basil Cobb, has failed your daughter, has failed to implement the necessary changes to keep her safe, has failed to bring in mandatory detention in high-risk IPV cases, has failed you in terms of strict enforcement of no-contact orders, has failed you in terms of increasing sentences for violent repeat offenders. For the last 10 years, all that we have heard is promise after promise after promise and no deliverables. It started with C-75 when they made it easier for repeat violent offenders to be recycled through the justice system, catch and release. They followed up with C-5, eliminated mandatory minimum penalties for serious drug offenses, all drug offenses and serious gun offenses. They made it easier for sick mass murderers like Paul Bernardo to be transferred from maximum security to medium security to enjoy the comforts. Because why not? Liberals have always favored the accused. Yeah. And to you, Ms. Wambach, your considerations and concerns, what about that victim ombudsperson? Yeah. For almost a year and a half, this failure of a Liberal government did not appoint that person. And that person right now does not have the necessary tools to keep victims safe. So I apologize to you that your government has failed you so miserably. To you, Ms. Alexander, one thing that struck out to me as very important, your phrase, almost as if the government wants this. Can you elaborate on that?
I think it's pretty obvious that we have a problem here, and having, with a lot of my friends here, the social outreach of millions and millions of people saying, what is this government doing? Why are they favoring the criminals? Why are they not holding obviously dangerous people accountable? And I feel like a broken record. I feel like I'm banging my head against the same walls the way that my ex did to me. This government has been an extension of the abuse that my ex committed against me. And I don't understand what color of red they need the blood to be. How many of us have to die? How many times do we have to say, repeat, suffer before we get both sides of the government? This is a nonpartisan issue on the same team so that we put criminals away and protect the public.
Right. Yeah. And you specifically pointed out Mr. Maloney for making promises to you a couple of years ago. Have other members of the Liberal government made similar promises that were simply not kept? I tend to use this experience. In April 2024, I sent a letter about my experience in the injustice system to Pierre, to Jagmeet, and to Justin. Pierre responded in 48 hours. Justin responded in 7 months, and Jagmeet never did. And
Then the committee meeting July 31st, 2024, where the Liberals and the NDP put a motion in about abortion, and I was forced to walk out of a committee meeting just like this because clearly you have to know at this point that this is wrong and that something needs to be done and that this leniency to criminals is just going to end up killing more people. Clearly, you know that now. We are screaming it up the rooftops. It's in every single newspaper, every single headline. The media is frustrated with it. Why aren't you doing something about it? Seriously, something serious about it.
Ms. Alexander, and you're absolutely correct. For years, we've heard, you know, it's all in the imagination of the minds of Canadians. It's not our problem, it's the provinces, it's provincial judges, it's lack of space, never accepting responsibility for their own abject failure. Now they brought forth Bill C-14 called the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. There is one provision that increases sentencing. And you would think, given the myriad of serious violent offenses we have in this country, including IPV, you think they would address it? No. Their focus is on contempt of court. People who are subpoenaed to give evidence and choose not to, they want to increase the penalty from 6 months to 2 years less 1 day. It shows a lack of priority on that side of the House when it comes to your rights. That's what we'll fix.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brock. Go ahead.
Thank you to all the witnesses, not just for your time here, but for the pieces of your soul you had to put on full display here. I think, you know, certainly I speak for my colleagues, we all felt it. We didn't just hear it, we felt it. And, you know, I'm new to this chamber. I make no comment as to what's happened in previous parliaments, but I certainly came here largely to deal with some of these issues head on. So I thank you very much for helping us do this. Mr. Broadfoot, I met you this summer at one of the vigils for your daughter, and I saw how the community in London had rallied around her and celebrated her life and all that she did in her 17 years. And sadly, we had to acknowledge all that won't be in the decades that should have come of her life. And I know that you never wanted to have to be the advocate you are, but you have, and we are better off for it, and I'm grateful to that. And you made a comment which is so painfully obvious, but I think it bears repeating here, that if your daughter's abuser had been behind bars, your daughter would still be alive. Now, we have heard testimony from some of the academic set, some of the witnesses that our Liberal colleagues have called, who like to put an emphasis on the rights of the accused. But there is only one life. There's only one shot that we have when intimate partner violence is at issue here. So explain your message, if you could, Mr. Broadfoot, to those who believe that this is an abstract discussion about rights and not a life or death issue for women and girls.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. And again, thank you for being at the vigil this summer. It was greatly appreciated. How do I answer this? I mean, again, it's if you're a defenseless woman or girl, and you're being attacked by your male partner, which is, you know, the statistics show that this is it's a high statistical matter when it comes to the males abusing women. How is this individual supposed to try to protect themselves? We look around, even this room, this committee, and we are bigger than the average woman that is here. And how do they do that? How, again, and putting your hands around somebody's neck, again, I'll repeat it, literally saying, I am going to decide whether I'm going to let you continue to breathe. How is that strangulation in itself, if you are charged with it, as my daughter's abuser was on the first offense? How is that individual allowed to walk out of that police station on that same very day? And as Jacqueline mentioned, I have not met her personally, but we are unfortunately family. How are we not monitoring these people? And I use that word very loosely. I prefer the word monsters.
I agree. I thank you for that. I'll ask you, Ms. Alexander, I know you've seen at least some of the testimony we've heard to date on the committee, and when you hear people talk in the abstract about the rights of accusers, what does that mean to you?
I wish you could be inside my head right now and know what it feels like to have a 6'3", 225-pound male beating your skull into the floor. I wish you could see the blood that I tried to wash out of my hair in the shower. I wish you could understand the fear of being confined to a space by someone who is double your size. Why in wrestling do we put people in weight classes? Women can't fight this. I asked my stunt double, I said, you're a black belt in all the millions of things. Would you have been able to take him on? She's like, not a chance, Kate. If he, an abuser in that mindset with the adrenaline and the testosterone running through them, if they want to kill you, they will. And I'm alive for the grace of God, of my friends who got a 2-word WhatsApp message. I'm alive because I let him beat me. I had to just let him, because if I fought him back, it got worse. So I just took it and somehow survived. I wish you could understand that, and I'm not allowed to bring props. I got in trouble for that last year. But I can show you the videos and photos of him doing this and the blood splattering. I can show you my black and blue body. I need you to understand that when you're making policy choices. This is not a joke. It's real, and it affects your system for life. And it rips families apart. And it's actually more expensive to do what we're doing right now from a financial level, because there's so many financial consequences for abuse. You can't work, you can't function properly, and it costs billions of dollars to not deal with these individuals properly. Billions of dollars. We need to do better, because this is real. And I'm alive by the grace of God. Unfortunately, Brianna, unfortunately, Madison is not. But I know what their daughters went through. I just live to tell the tale. So I want you to understand, everyone in this room to understand that, and take that and get over your partisan bullshit. Get over it. Thank you.
The minister apologized to victim and families who have lost loved ones on his deliberate inaction on fentanyl sentencing.
The Honourable Minister, very briefly.
Mr. Speaker, I've been in this role for 3 weeks.
What's up, gang? Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. So it was a really rough week for our public safety minister, Gary Sangre, and boy, oh boy, it doesn't get any better. We've got Larry Brock and Mike Barrett grilling him here. Let's see if they get any straight answers. You can make up your own mind on what's going on here. I'm just showing you what went down. Here we go. Let's take a peek.
Oh, yeah. The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Let's go.
Madam Chair, my questions will be directed through you to the Minister of Public Safety. How many frontline CBSA officers are posted to the Canada-US border?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, there are 10,000 frontline officers, both CBSA and RCMP, that are deployed to secure our border.
Sir, the member to split his time.
I'll be splitting my time with 3 of my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many CBSA officers serving on the front line are posted at the Lansdowne and Johnstown ports of entry?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will be able to get that information from my colleague.
Well, member.
How many net new frontline CBSA officers will be serving at the land borders between Canada and the U.S. as a result of his bill?
Minister.
The investment of $1.3 billion we're making towards the border, we will have 1,000 CBSA and 1,000 new RCMP officers to secure the border.
By by what date will they be at their posts?
Honourable Minister.
We will be able to provide those operational details to the member in short order, Mr. Speaker.
How many shipping containers are scanned on a monthly basis at the Canada-US border?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I'll be able to provide that information to my colleague at a later date.
The Honourable Member.
I've only been here for 3 weeks.
Are there scanners at the ports of entry at Johnstown and Lansdowne to scan containers or trucks at the border?
Minister.
For operational reasons, Mr. Speaker, I probably shouldn't be answering that question.
The Honourable Member.
I would encourage the minister, through you, Mr. Chair, to either get numbers or some information, or we can both go to those ports of entry and take a look for ourselves to see the lack of infrastructure to scan the cans that are coming across the border at those two locations. How many firearms have been seized at the land borders between Canada and the United States?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there's been a number of seizures of firearms in different operations. There's Operation Blizzard that was completed recently. There was earlier a seizure of a number of firearms. I don't have the exact number, but in terms of...
The Honourable Member.
How many containers entering Canada have been found to have contained fentanyl, smuggled guns, or human trafficking?
The Honourable Minister.
2 minutes. We'll be able to provide that information to my colleague.
The Honourable Member.
How many additional containers will be scanned as a result of this bill?
The Minister.
This bill is not looking specifically at scanning. It's a much more broader bill.
The Honourable Member.
The government's spending $342 million a year to collect legally registered firearms from licensed, trained, and tested hunters, farmers, and sport shooters. How much money is being dedicated specifically to interdicting firearms at the border?
The Honourable Minister.
The investments we're making relate specifically to the program of buyback, and that it's not going directly towards anything other than the buyback program.
Remember.
Seems like an incredible missed opportunity, I can tell you, at all ports of entry, including those in my district at Johnstown and Lansdowne. Minister, you said, and I quote, the actual crimes, the actual issues around bail are quite sound, and they are embedded and codified in law right now. Minister, I have 2 questions for you. Do you think that current bail laws and the regime is working, and do you believe that Canadians feel safe?
Under address questions to the Chair, the Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we look forward to bringing changes to the bail program, to bail reform. But of course, this is something that involves not just the federal government, but also the provincial and municipalities as well.
The Honourable Member.
Minister, Mr. Chair, I have asked the minister a number of questions seeking specifics on the bill that they've prioritized as number 2 in the order, their first bill that they've put forward in this Parliament. The minister hasn't been able to provide any of the details that would satisfy some of the most pressing issues facing our country right now. Minister, where does it say in your legislation that you will repeal any of the laws passed by the Liberals that have weakened bail conditions and allowed dangerous offenders to stay on our streets?
Minister, in 12 seconds.
As I've indicated earlier, Mr. Speaker, this is not a bail reform bill, it's a border bill.
We will move on. The Honourable Member for Brantford Brant, Six Nations.
To the Minister, through you, Mr. Chair, prior to his 2015 election, you practiced business, real estate, and human international rights law, but never criminal law. Is that correct?
The Minister.
No, it's not correct, Mr. Speaker. I did a fair amount of criminal work as well.
The Honourable Member.
Your previous roles as Parliamentary Secretary to former Justice Lametti and your brief 2-month appointment as Justice Minister this year, have you ever attended a courthouse to observe a bail hearing?
Through the Chair, the Honourable Minister.
Not recently, but I have attended many bail hearings.
The Member.
Through the Chair, have you observed a bail hearing since becoming Minister for Public Safety?
The Minister.
In the 3 weeks I have been appointed, no.
The Honourable Member.
Does he intend to?
Minister.
In 2022, former Justice Minister Lametti said at committee, Canada's bail system was strong and sound despite calls for reform from premiers and police. You doubled down on that statement on April the 15th, stating bail in Canada is quite sound. Do you still believe that?
Again, Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Another very interesting committee investigation. This one is public service and national security. We've got the minister, Gary Anasangre. We've all heard of the Tiger Gary here. He's an alleged and he's so incapable, he humiliates himself. Frank Caputo has to get kind of hostile. Let's get into this. It's one to watch. These committee meetings are always wild. Let's check this one out.
We'll now turn to questions and comments on the part of members of Parliament, starting with MP Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask these questions through the Chair, and before that, I do thank you for attending, Minister, with all of your colleagues. Through the Chair, I ask the following questions. Minister, 600 foreign nationals were set to be deported. 70% of them committed violent crimes, including sex assaults. Where are they?
Thank you, Mr. Caputo. Thank you for that question. As you're aware, the Canada Border Services Agency is tasked with removals of those who are deemed to be
Minister, I'm sorry, we don't need a preamble. We just need an answer. Where are the 600 people who were set to be deported? Maybe I'll ask this way. Do you know where they are? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, if I may respond to this question in whole. So, as you're aware, the CBSA is tasked with the removal of those who are inadmissible to Canada. In this particular case, we have been ensuring that removals have been taking place at an unprecedented rate.
I asked about the 600 people, Minister. I didn't ask about removals at an unprecedented rate. Do you know where they are? Yes or no?
Well, there is a set of
I'll take that as a no, Minister. Let's move on.
Let's be clear, Mr. Caputo. There are a number of individuals who are in the process of being removed. So of the 600 you talk about, there is a breakdown, and I'd like to invite Ms. Gorman
You are the
to respond
Minister.
to this.
You are the expert. The Globe and Mail reported 600 people are missing. You're the Minister. You're expected to know this. The buck stops with you. We have 6 minutes. You don't know. Let's move on. You promised 1,000 new border officers for the CBSA. How many have been hired?
So right now, as you're aware, we are in the process of ensuring that the 1,000 new CBSA officers will be trained appropriately.
Again, Minister, you're answering questions I'm not asking. I asked how many were hired. Simple number.
Mr. Caputo, I'm not here for your TikTok videos, okay? Like I'm here to.
No, and Minister, I'm here to answer.
I'm here to answer questions.
Mr. Minister, let's just these conversations are important, but they need to be understandable, including through interpretation.
Duclos is one of the creepiest people that ever stepped foot inside the House of Commons. What a weird guy this is.
So I have some tolerance to bilateral interactions, which is fine. That can in some cases speed up and increase the efficiency of the conversation. But if it leads to people not being able to understand the flow of the conversation, I'll have to intervene.
I'll commence. First of all, TikTok is banned in Canada. Second, I don't have an account. I'm here for Canadians. I'm here for answers. You can obfuscate. I will continue to press forward. RCMP didn't know how many of the 1,000 officers that they promised were hired. Just a number. How many?
So I will invite the RCMP Commissioner
I want to hear it from you, Minister.
From
you, Minister.
But I'm not responsible for hiring of the officers.
You're not. I beg your pardon. You are the Minister.
I'm sorry. This is not useful because it is obviously impossible for anyone listening to the interpretation to understand the flow of the conversation. So, and again, we want to have a dense, a speedy, content-full conversation, but it has to be understandable. So please, let's make sure that this is happening.
Mr. Chair, I'll be very clear. I'm asking the Minister these questions. The buck stops with him. I'm not asking for him to defer to anybody. If he doesn't know the answer, just say it. Just the other day on a recording, he said, "Don't ask me to explain the logic to you." He was perfectly capable of saying it then. He's capable of saying it now. Minister, do you know the number of the 1,000 promised RCMP officers? Yes or no?
Speaker, the RCMP are preparing to hire 1,000, including ensuring that training facilities at depot are equipped, because this will be solely for federal policing, and the work at depot to ensure that the right modules, the right level of training is in place is currently being prepared, and as soon as they're able to recruit, they will be hired and they will be on our streets.
Okay, that is a zero, I take it then, because you wouldn't give us a number. Now, Mr., you said in leaked audio that the gun buyback wouldn't work. Do you stand by that?
That is not what I said, Mr. Caputo.
Well, you could have fooled me, Minister. You actually said, quote, don't ask me to explain the logic to you. You talked about how it's only been 3 weeks on the job. I'm not an expert on this, right? I'm not an expert. The tone that you said was that this wouldn't work. It was being done for politics. Do you stand by that, yes or no?
That is not correct.
Do you believe that the buyback will work?
The buyback is right now being implemented. There's a pilot right now in Cape Breton.
That is not what I asked.
Mr. Chair, I would like I think the fair way to do this is that I get adequate time to respond to questions posed. So if I may, the buyback program is currently being implemented. There's a pilot right now in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. From all accounts, the registration appears to be going well. We are ironing out any logistical issues that may arise.
That registration,
the program
Minister,
will be expanded
let's talk
across
about that.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order. I'm sorry to disrupt, but I really want to hear the answer, whether answer is that you like or not, but I want to learn, and I have the same right as any other members here and the people who are watching. So I appreciate if you can leave the time. And plus, I want to add, Mr. Chair, that TikTok is not banned in Canada. It's available on the app stores. Thank you.
That is...
Mr. Chair, I'm asking questions here. This is my time. This is Canadians' time. Mr. Chair, I will not be interrupted.
Your time has stopped, Mr. Caputo, so what I'm going to say is not going to reduce your time available. But I think the point is that we want the conversations to be again dense, to be as forthcoming and as useful as they can be, but they cannot overlap. So if I hear two people speak at the same time, it must be impossible for interpreters to do their job.
Mr. Chair, I will reclaim my time, Canadians' time, when the minister is going on and on for speaking. I understand the Liberals want to protect the Liberal minister. I'm not here for that. I'm here for answers. Let's keep going here. You spoke about Cape Breton Island. Now, there is a chief who is the brother-in-law to a Liberal MP on Cape Breton Island. Did you speak with that chief in respect of this buyback? Just a yes or no, please.
Speaker, as you know, the Mass Casualty Commission report...
That's not what I asked, Minister. I asked whether you spoke with a chief.
Mr. Chair, I would like the opportunity to respond. The Mass Casualty Commission report indicated that governments need to do everything in their powers to ensure that...
I asked whether you spoke...
Mr.
Chair, he doesn't get to talk out the clock. He has to answer. I asked whether he spoke with the chief, Chair. That's it. He doesn't get to talk about turkey basters or whatever we're going to talk about here. He has to speak about the answer, the questions he's given, and I won't stand for this as somebody representing Canadians to let him talk out the clock. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Gang, what's up? Aaron, Canadian Looney. We're trying to bring the most entertaining pieces of committees. These are a couple of old pieces. Chrystia Freeland, though, she was brutal. She's going to be going head-to-head here with Larry Brock and Jos Raj Halan, two of our favorites to watch on here. But Chrystia Freeland is a special kind of witch. Let's just take a look and a listen. This woman is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. With MP Howland for 6 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, have you seen our Common Sense Conservative leader's brilliant 15-minute documentary on the housing held in Canada that's been viewed over 4 million times?
I am certainly familiar with the Conservative scheme on housing. I haven't watched the video itself.
Okay, so I would strongly encourage that you do watch it, because it's a common sense Conservative plan how to build more homes and not more bureaucracy. And while you're at it, maybe like, share, and subscribe so others can see a common sense Conservative plan on how to get housing fixed as well.
I'm happy to comment on the conservative scheme today. In fact,
your
very
government's
happy
housing
to.
agency, CMHC, says that 3.5 million additional homes need to be built in Canada by 2030 to restore housing affordability. Your housing agency, the same one, the head of that agency says that, it said 2 days ago at the Senate Finance Committee, that your government has no plan to reach that number. In fact, in this committee, that same agency, your housing agency, says that that target is not attainable under current conditions because of high interest rates and because of higher costs that were caused by your government. In other words, your own housing agency has no faith in you or your government. If your own housing agency has no faith in you, why should Canadians?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Hallen. You asked me to comment on the conservative scheme on housing.
I didn't ask you to comment on that. I made a comment.
In fact, invited me to, so let me comment.
I'd like to hear an answer.
First of all, I would point out...
Point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Hallan, as he does every time the minister comes, asks a question or makes a statement and then refuses to allow the minister to answer. And so, Mr. Chair, I would just ask we allow the minister to answer the questions out of respect for the minister and the other members of this committee, but also the folks at home who are watching who would like to hear the answers.
The question is about our department not having faith in you.
MP Hallen, I am going to ask, like it did happen in the last meeting, a lot of crosstalk, you jumping in when you ask a question.
The question was not about the documentary. The question was about
you
your
ask the
department
question
not having faith in
out of
her.
respect and out of respect to everybody that's here.
Minister, can you please answer why Canadians should have faith in you?
MP Hallen.
Even though your housing
MP
agency
Hallen.
doesn't. That's the question.
MP Hallen.
I've asked my question.
MP Hallen. You asked a question. Allow the witness to answer the question.
She's not
the
answering
witness
the question.
The witness did not even have a nanosecond to answer your question.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Not only is that irrelevant and untrue, and they're not answering the question, you shut me down by adjourning the meeting improperly. So could you please let Conservatives speak? I know you don't want to hear it as a Liberal. I know you don't want to hear about the housing hell, and you should watch the video too. I might add.
MP Lawrence,
Chair, I'll ask my question again. Let's move on. I will ask my question again. It's my time, Chair. I will ask the question again.
In fact, actually,
Minister,
let me
your
just
housing
say,
agency has no faith
I believe
in
that
your
MP
plan.
Hallen
Why
asked me a
should
question.
Canadians?
I certainly believe the point of this exercise is for him to ask me a question. He offered quite a long
Questions on the table
preamble
3
with
times
lots
now.
of points embedded in it.
Why should
and I'd
Canadians
like to
have faith in
respond
you
to
when your
those.
own agency
if
doesn't?
MP Hallen would like to
That's the
hear a
question.
response.
Allow the witness, please, to answer the questions.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that Conservative senators have been reprimanded for bullying witnesses, and it would be terrible to have that kind of behavior.
Your Prime
here in the
Minister
House.
has been reprimanded for bullying strong women in his own caucus for standing up to his corruption.
So let me now speak about housing. And let me first point out that there is an internal contradiction in what the Conservative members of this committee have done when it comes to voting and their purported scheme on housing. Actually,
Point
I
of
believe
order,
that
Mr.
your
Chair.
votes are very relevant.
There has to be, you have to stop interrupting. Stop interrupting.
So I'll move on. I'll move on.
I haven't finished answering.
I'll move on. It's my time, and I only have limited time.
I'm afraid actually it's time for questions and answers, MP Hallen. So I would like to answer because I have things to say about housing because we have a plan.
This is exactly the reason why your non-answer proves why Canadians and your own housing agency has no faith in your government to meet the target.
Point of order.
What this proves is that the Conservatives do not want to actually listen to the answers. The point of order is, excuse me. I have listened to you interrupt the minister and not allow her to speak. I have the right to make a point of order. Now I'm being interrupted and heckled during my point of order. Please, Chair, please, I'm asking you. Minister Freeland has the right to respond to the questions that are put to, and this is not. This is a point of order. Now I'm being heckled and interrupted.
It's not a
during
point
my
of order.
Point of
this
order.
is a breach of process.
This is.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
The witnesses have.
Okay.
I will move on.
MP
I can't,
Lawrence and MP
Chair.
Hallen.
This is descended so badly now that I'm being interrupted during my point of order.
Yes. Okay. Members, first off, stop the crosstalk. Okay. Stop the crosstalk.
I'll
and
move
the
on.
other thing is, MP Hallen, MP Lawrence, any MP is we have interpreters here. You know, there's a lot of screaming going on. If members screaming into the mics, I think in my opening remarks I explained the danger, the health and safety to our interpreters. So I would ask, That is with crosstalk. That is with screaming. That is with not having respect and decorum here in this room. I think that is what we want.
Point of order.
Yeah, we are looking for respect and decorum. Point of
Please
order.
don't
MP Lawrence.
crosstalk. And I raised my voice at a reasonable tone, and you did not recognize it last meeting. So that's why I have to raise my voice, because I'm hoping you'll hear me, Chair.
I can hear you, MP Lawrence.
Chair, with respect, I'd like to move on to my next question. So we can agree that Canadians and your own housing agency don't have faith in your government, which they've already outlined. And that's why after your government spent $89 billion on photo op funds for housing promises that have not been actualized, rents, mortgages, the amount of down payment needed on a house has all doubled in just 8 years. This was never there before your government, and it certainly won't be there afterwards. Canadians are living in a housing hell and a cost of living crisis. 2 million Canadians are going into a food bank in a single month just in 8 years. There's a 100% increase in food bank usage. A third of those kids are kids that are starving because of high taxes like the carbon tax and other factors that have been caused by your government. The number one reason for food bank usage is because of the housing unaffordability that your government has created. 10 cities across this country, there are nurses living in their cars. There are students living under bridges. That's 8 years after your government. Why should anyone believe that anything that your government has done is actually helping addressing the affordability crisis?
Thank you for the question. Let me just start by saying Canadians know the Conservatives cannot be trusted when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable people in Canada. Since we formed government, 2.3 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty, and our government has particularly. I'm sorry, Mr. Hallen. I'm speaking about poverty in Canada, which you purport to care about and which you purport to have addressed in your question. And I'd like to finish my answer, please.
It was about food banks.
The Canada Child Benefit has had a huge impact on Canadian families and is having an impact today, lifting millions and millions out of poverty, and the statistics show that. Our early learning and child care program
Minister,
is
the
helping
question
Canadians.
Was clear. I'll have to move on because I have a limited amount of time.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You haven't given me a chance to answer, and that is not only rude,
2 million
it's
Canadians are still going into food bank. I'll just ask my last question because my time is limited. Your government promised by Thanksgiving that the price of food would go down. A scathing report came out this morning on the food index saying that food costs are going up, driven up also by your carbon tax because you're taxing farmers and those that are shipping the food and storing the food. Those people going into a food bank are increasing because of food costs and housing costs caused by your government. 83% actually that are going to food banks are working families. That's a phenomenon that we've never seen in this country before. So you promised on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving went by, food prices didn't come down. We thought maybe you meant the U.S. Thanksgiving. That went by as well. Nothing happened. It's almost Christmas time in the
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper, bumper, stomper, boo. Tell me, tell me, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romp Room.
Ding dong, knock, knock, hey, daddy, do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop, boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.